So, my first encounter of mental health was definitely when I was still living in Canada. Um, I don't think before that I had ever heard of mental health when I was in Burundi, but in Canada, obviously, I think the society is more open to it. And I had a friend that went through depression. We were in our last year of high school. So that was the first time that I heard someone acknowledge it and heard that she was going through therapy. And yeah, I think my understanding of it at the same time, I remember maybe not being very clear what it meant for her to have mental health issues. And uh, but at the same time, I think we were in an environment, the school that we were attending was very, they cared a lot for us, and they had a psychologist on site. Like we had one that was dating. So any of us could, go to see him. But yeah, definitely recalls a bit of confusion, but understanding that she had to go to these weekly sessions and that it was going to help her get better. So I would think that's the first time I heard about it. And you?
When it comes to encountering someone with mental health, I've been very sensitive from a very long time of the people around me. So when we were very young, actually when we moved from Burundi to Swaziland, and we used to see people on the streets. So people who were begging, but there were some beggars that were begging and others that actually seemed crazy. So we used to call them Sanbonani because I used to always say Sanbonani, and we used to run. But I used to always be curious in understanding what actually led that person to that stage, you see. So it was something that I used to always be curious about. I thought, was it something that the person was born with, or it's just life that happened to them? So that was my first, and then afterwards, I think when I went to the remedial school for my primary school, that's when I started realizing the idea of, remedial mental health and all these different aspects of life. Yeah.
Definitely felt like only certain people go through it, and because there's always this, and I know it's gonna sound bad, but we always, at least at that age, I heard a lot of people always say it's a white people type of disease or challenge, as black people, who's depressed, like we're tougher, or you're stronger. So and they, I think people in the community minimize those issues. So definitely was something that I felt like, oh, it's normalized because I'm in a white environment. Canada is white, my school was mainly white, and yeah.
I think just to add to what you're saying, when they referred it as a white only problem, it's because I think whites economically have always been doing better than blacks.
Okay.
So with black people, it almost was like it's a luxury to go to a therapist because it's extremely expensive. That whole mental health journey is very expensive. So, and most of the time it actually isn't a once-off session or 2 sessions. It is almost a lifetime.
100%.
You see?
Yeah.
So I think with me, because I've always been, I don't know, as an artist, I've been in tune with thoughts, with thinking. I did not necessarily think that I was going to ever encounter it, or anyone close to me was ever going to encounter it, because I always felt like our life is way too good. And because we're so blessed to have both parents, so blessed to have incredible siblings, to have the education, the stability, the social stability and social status. I thought that we're not going to go through it, but I was still very curious to understanding why or how it impacts others. Yeah. from a very young age, my parents have always known that I'm a very artistic person. So I used to be more in tune with the emotional side of things. And the more that used to happen, they used to somehow almost shield me. And every time I was having a low day, which was like me not wanting to go to school or me not wanting to do my schoolwork, they would almost say, sleep it off, just rest. You just need to, recharge. And then after you recharge, you'll be back doing what you do best. And for me, I had been doing it from primary to high school. But when I started university, when I was living with my sister, Garens, and I was given a lot of chores and a lot of work to do for university, and I used to just switch off. And because I was so used to that continuous support from my family, Garens used to always come through, and she used to always step in and she used to assist me. And for me, I thought, it's a bit overwhelming, but it's not depression. I just need a rest. And that actually started happening throughout my my marriage life, and also my business relationships, where I would show up one day and I wouldn't show up the next day. And people started wanting to actually ask for answers, like, why aren't you as consistent as we are? Aren't you as hungry as we are? And that's when I thought to myself, and I'm like, I want to succeed, but I do not know how to be as consistent as you guys are. And that's when I realized that, I could be facing something that needs to be looked into.
And I think when with Jessy's experience is because we had gone through couples therapy, then he was going through all of these emotions and all these moments that we actually are having such a hard time understanding. What does that mean? Why does he wakes up one day, but then the next day he's like low, and then Jessy could spend like, let's say, 3 days without leaving his room, like being in bed, and we're trying to make sense of it. So because we already had experience with therapy, I think it was the transition into him going to personal therapy kind of happened naturally. We didn't struggle to understand the, let's say, importance or the value of it, because we had experienced, again, therapy together, and we saw clear benefits. It changed the way we communicated, etc. So then he goes to therapy, but I want you maybe to share a little bit about that experience, because I think for me it was such a huge part of our year in 2020, and it pushed me to also personally reflect on my own journey with mental health.
So I think how my family helped me really navigate through this whole journey was they always built a system of support. So I told you guys initially that my parents and my family, we did everything together. Things were good, we're together. Things were bad, things were good together. So on my side, when they noticed that I am more prone to more emotional things, and the instabilities really impact me more than others, it almost is like you are a strong person, but your strengths lie more on the whole emotional side. So when you need any emotional advice, we come to you. When you need someone that is going to advise in terms of how things should be resolved, we come to you. But when it comes to doing things and getting things done, they would give it more to my other siblings, my sisters, my sister Garens, my sister Puette, my sister Gloria, because they felt that they were extremely efficient. But on my side, my efficiency were laid in my emotions. So I think they used to continuously say, whenever Jesse's feeling down, let him breathe. Let him breathe. He needs just a day or two to recharge, or he needs a day or two for him to actually be painting or to be drawing. And that actually, for me, I had not noticed was me recharging. Mm-hmm. You see, so they used to continuously say, recharge, we'll be here waiting for you. And every time I got back, it was not almost like you dropped the ball. You were supposed to be here, you were supposed to be doing this. They almost maybe felt like, man, that recharge has brought you back with so much energy. And from my side, I almost felt like that recharge is a necessity. And it was just like, okay, that's what I do. I recharge, but never ever thought, man, I'm a depressed person. Yeah.
But I also want to disagree a little bit because we later on found out that it's not necessarily depression. So I think with what Jesse went through in 2020 and him being clinically diagnosed, that he was clinically depressed, I think it led us to then face having to understand what that means, making the right research. And I think in the process of it, he came across something called HSP, which is highly sensitive people. And when you start understanding what it is, you understand that it's not even a mental health condition, And when I started, I spent a lot of time reading articles about it, and I realized what Jesse has always been is a highly sensitive person, and also I think his parents had understood it, without knowing again the terminology, but they had built a system around him to help him manage that HSP. But when you read the research, you find that when an HSP person find themselves in an environment now that's not built to accept them as an HSP, what happens is instances of depression, for example, which is what happened to JC, because then he comes into this marriage with someone who's not built whatsoever to understand this, to create that supportive environment, accepting environment for him. I wasn't built like that. And I think for me, I come from a family where we're very independent. Yeah. So we do things ourselves. And they had built a system around him that says, because we know Jesse is an emotional being, when we want things to be done fast, we'll give it to the girls. Or when he's struggling with something, the girls are going to be his sisters. When I mean the girls, his sisters are there to uplift him. But I wanted him to be independent because that's the environment. I mean, in my family, me, my brother, and my other sister who's closer in age, the three of us have always operated independently. And because I didn't create that environment, I think that's what led to that depression. But I want to make sure people understand that it doesn't mean that your whole life you've been depressed. 100%. Not at all. Being HSP is not being depressed, Yeah.
And I think just to add quickly, when it comes to the idea of the whole highly sensitive persons, I always thought I was an extrovert. So I used to enjoy a lot of attention from a lot of people, but not to only realize that what that is, it's overstimulation. Mm-hmm. So it used to overstimulate me into a point where I used to almost have anxiety. So I used to enjoy being on stage. I used to enjoy all these things, but it got to a point where the praises started to come in and I used to just not want anything. And I never understood it. But recently we also even realized that I actually could be an introvert more than an extrovert just because of just that research that we did. Yeah.
For me, when so first I think I need to say that the moment we realized he was HSP and I understood what HSP was, guys, like a huge weight, fell off my shoulder. Like, I cannot, Oprah likes to speak about these aha moments. It was an aha moment. Like, I felt very relieved because it's so hard to build a life with someone and you really don't like, I used to call them inconsistencies. And I'm like, I want someone who's consistent. I want someone that I can rely on, And I used to really, really battle with that. So when we understood what HSP was, even though I felt like, yes, it is up to me to create that environment, I also wanted him because of our nature. And then when I find something, I'll go into readings, like the whole academic side kicks in, and I want to know that thing inside out. But I had to also make sure that he understands that he needs to understand himself as well. Because it's one thing for me to go on this whole journey of understanding HSP, but he needs to understand what it is so that when it's happening to him, he understands his emotions. So I think that was the first step, really, for Jessy to understand even that terminology, that now he can say, I was overstimulated. Guys, I do happy dance when I'm like, oh, he actually realized that's what's happening, because before that vocabulary wasn't there, so he wouldn't be able to articulate that's what's happening to him. So then now in terms of creating that environment, because the reality is we've made these vows, we are on this journey for life, and I feel like if I don't participate, this thing was already having a negative impact on me, on my personal life and my ability to move forward in life. So I think for me to manage my own anxiety around it, then I had to say, I need to be all hands on deck, and I'm gonna learn how to manage this thing. Have I understood how to manage it? Not at, like, I wouldn't say, let's say on a scale of 0 to 10, I think now I'm sitting at a 5 to 6, which is already progress, because a year from today, we didn't know what HSP was. So now it's about, like, I would have discussion with him and say, Jess, when you know you're being overstimulated, now learn how to take that moment, a break, for example. So if, let's say, Monday, Tuesday, you've set in these client meetings or with your team, and it's like boom, 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 and because you have the ability to feel everything like times 100 compared to someone who's a non-HSP, you take all of that energy and it overstimulates you. Maybe you should learn how to take a break on Wednesday and then teach your team to adjust around it. So they know that Wednesday is a no meeting Wednesday, no one is expecting anything from you on Wednesday. Then you can completely switch off. You switch off at home, you switch off from work, recharge, be with yourself, do what you want to do, and then come back on Thursday.
So I just wanted to add something. So for me, she used to give me that advice, and I thought that advice was incredible. But we're two different personalities. She's a planner and I'm not. Because I'm a business owner and I'm in the entrepreneurial space, it's extremely important how you handle the people that you're working with. And with Steffi, what she used to always tell me is be honest with them, but also give them a clear way forward in terms of saying Monday to Wednesday, we are working extremely hard, but Wednesday I won't be available. And we're going to start again on Thursday, But on my side, because I was not that good at planning, I used to realize that Monday could be actually a slow day. And I would actually start the day halfway because I overslept, or I'm just in my mind thinking. And then the Tuesday would be a full day, but then that would not allow me to have my Wednesday off. and everything used to get mixed up. And I used to realize that Wednesday I take a half day off, which leaves everyone in the dark, not really understanding what they should be doing, because I did not even leave and leave instructions. I used to literally leave and go quiet on anyone and everyone that was working with me. And I think that's one thing that frustrated Steffi, because she was just saying that the people that are there supposed to be running things, you're leaving them without any instructions or any guidance, and you expect things to be okay when you come back, but when you come back, things are falling apart. And that gives you even more anxiety.
They used to call me, guys.
Yeah.
So I would get calls during my workday of people that are in distress because they have a client meeting, they have this and this, they don't know what to do. So really not a fun situation to be, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, as I discussed from the beginning, that this was almost an issue that was always dealt in-house. So with our family, with my family, yeah? And they knew how somehow to motivate me and give me the time to rest. So I think as I left that and I started my own family, I always wanted, and I always gave Steffi the responsibility to be that person who can arrange everything for it to go smoothly, and for me to allow myself to actually be efficient but also rest. And the moment that did not happen, I started placing myself as a victim. And the moment I started placing myself as a victim, I used to continuously go offline and I used to blame the things that were happening around me, which was a client reacting in a bad way, or an employee not listening to my instructions, or Steffi not being able to assist me with this thing that I need assistance with because she knows that I'm not good in accounting, and I used to throw that in her direction. So I used to always make everything around me the problem, and I never looked within myself for solutions. But it's because I think that's how I was raised. I was raised to always not to make myself the problem. So I was always saying, whenever Jesse's facing something, the people around him are going to level the playing field and it's going to be better. And the moment I realized that's not the case, from the businesses that I was starting to the marriage that I was actually building, I then went into deeper, longer days of sleeping, longer days of not being interactive with anyone. And the moment that started happening, I started looking within myself. And it was extremely scary because I realized that there was actually nothing. I looked and there was nothing, because all my strength was always gathered and supported by the people around me. So the moment I started looking within me and I realized that I never built that muscle, that's when I realized it's either I'm about to lose my marriage and my businesses and anything, actually. Even my relationship with my siblings and my parents. When I used to go quiet, I went quiet also with them. So I was literally in a place of silence. It's me against the world. So when I got to that point, that's when I realized I do need to make time to actually see a therapist. And I was just very fortunate that my wife had a stable job that allowed me, to go to see a therapist. And that was the journey. Yeah.
So I know, we always say how 2020 was lit for the whole world. 2020 was very lit for our household. So Jessy was diagnosed with clinical depression about 2 weeks and a half before South Africa went into lockdown.
Level 5.
Level 5. So we're talking about the 27th of March 2020. That's when the whole country went on shutdown. So a few weeks before that, he got the diagnosis. Then he's told he needs to take all these medication, and we don't even understand at the time what really what's coming or what the side effects is going to be of the, and it was a lot of medication. So I was very uncomfortable with it. Then we go into lockdown, and lockdown was a period where anyone already had to make huge adjustments. Overnight we all find ourselves having to work from home. At the time we lived in a two bedroom apartment, and so we didn't really have a space set up for the office. So I literally had to work in the corridor. That's how we set up, and you're on these calls like from 8 in the morning until very late at night. I had started 2 months prior to that in a new team, which was an operational team, which meant that the COVID-19 response fell on us. So overnight, I find myself responsible of this beast that, I'm an accountant by background. I do numbers. I don't deal with people and having to manage their own anxiety. So work-wise was a huge learning curve for me, which in any normal setting would have been a good thing, because I'm an adrenaline junkie. So I like being put in those kind of situations. But the issue this time was that I was having to learn in a very short space of time new skills, but things at home were also not going well. And there wasn't any separation between home and work anymore for anyone across the world, because your work has invaded your personal space. So on one side, I'm having a husband who's going through something very serious. He's on medication. The medication has a huge impact on some of the side effects. He would feel dizzy. So he would spend long hours in the bedroom by himself. I can't really take care of him because I'm sitting on those calls that start very early in the morning, finish very late. And I also feel like me being in that intense work environment was also a reminder to him that he wasn't being active at the time, because again, it's a 2-bedroom apartment. So when I'm on calls, whatever is being said on those calls, he can hear, guys. Like, I would be sitting here and a few meters, Jessy was in the bed. So I'm also feeling very guilty that I'm invading his space. I'm on those calls. I can't give him at least what I thought was the right level of support, or what was expected from me. And again, no one really prepares you from like what it is to build a life with someone who has mental health. So it was like very, very hard for me. So there were guilt coming from all places, but
Can I jump in?
yes.
So, in addition to what she was saying, is she was working on one side, I was in the bedroom sleeping, and in my mind, I was saying, look at the dedication she's putting in the workplace. And even though she's financially assisting me to be getting that medication, to be going into that therapy session, she needs to also give me some attention. So I would be in a position where I'm like, I know she's working, but when is she making time for Jessy? Would actually lead me into almost punishing her further, which was like, I wouldn't cook, I wouldn't prepare things that I was supposed to prepare. I just gave her the worst time, when for her, she deep down felt, I'm giving you everything. And she was.
Yeah, no, I was really in distress, to be honest. I think, and maybe one thing we forgot to mention, which is very important as well, he decided to walk away from his business partnership around the same period. I think towards end of March, beginning of April. So then the reality hits, because I was very okay with him leaving it, because I think at the time I was really conscious that it was an additional stress for Jessy, and I was like, you know what, it's not worth you going through that for a job, so it's fine, walk away from it. But then, guys, there's realities of life, because I'm a very practical person. So then now there's the practicality of saying, okay, he's not working, you're working. So my work, I just actually need to make it has to work for us, because this is the only thing that's not only giving us some form of financial stability, but this is actually what's allowing us to be able to afford for Jessy to go to therapy, for Jessy to get the medication that he needs, etc., etc. So I think I was also feeling pressure to overcompensate from a work perspective, because I wasn't on a permanent contract. So I'm a contractor, I get paid per the hour that I work. So there's all of that pressure, because you're like, we're going through the biggest financial crisis in the global financial crisis. Companies are retrenching, things are happening. We all know consultant and contractors are the first one out of the door. So now, this is the only thing that's keeping our household together. So it has to work. So yeah, so it was very a period of a lot of distress. Yeah.
Okay, so my journey with seeing a psychiatrist and a psychologist has been a really eye-opening journey, because I think when we started going through it, I told Steffi that initially we're people that we question a lot and we're not open to things. And I told her, this time I am ready to go through anything and everything. All the professionals that they direct me to, I'll go and see. If they tell me that I need to take medication, I'll take it. These are things that initially we always said that's a no-no. But I said, I'm gonna try it, and the reason why I'm gonna try it is because there are gonna be people after me that are going through the same thing, and I want to actually give them an honest account of everything that I went through. So the one thing that I really appreciated about the idea of therapy was the importance of reflecting and understanding how the past, it's almost like it's on replay. The things that I passed through a very long time ago are the same things that are happening in my life now. So if I do not want that to be a continuous trend, I need to allow myself to heal, to cut that side of cut that part of life and move on to the next chapter. And what was so difficult is understanding that I'm actually in control of most of the things. That was very scary, because I always felt like the people around me always played the biggest role, and I never saw myself being the role leader. And that was the first time I realized that I could choose to either remain, or I could actually choose to make an effort and actually move out of it. And that first move was, taking the therapy seriously. It was taking the medication, being consistent, going to all the appointments to occupational therapists and else, every other thing after that. And until today, I'm still not healed. I think it's it's safe to say that I have embraced the journey. I think I share it more so that, not that I want to be the center of attention, but I just want to give the people a chance to understand what one goes through when they're going through that. And if ever someone else around me is going through something similar, maybe they will reach out behind closed doors. I used to always even attack Steffi in that sense, where I used to always tell her that she's got demons that she hasn't settled. But I then started realizing that it's actually even me fearing that journey and getting to a point where I can be silent and I can appreciate my journey by myself and try to heal by myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think having seen Jesse go through the journey has been really good. The growth in his journey, and also inspiring, I must say. I think looking back from where he was in March 2020 to where he is today, almost a year, I mean, even his therapist said it. Everyone was impressed by his progress, but I think he took, the commitment, the discipline, taking the medication. He also had to exercise a little bit, and I think seeing him go through the journey is what really inspired me to also, do my own introspection and realizing that the reality is I have pockets and moments in my life which I now recognize were moments where I was also depressed. But because I wasn't in an environment that acknowledged it, and I wasn't even necessarily told maybe you could go to therapy, etc., I never explored that option. But I think now, because we're both very strong believers in the benefits of therapy, I think we're very clear on the fact that we both have to continue this journey, but it also has to be an individual journey. We both have to go through our own therapy. Obviously, there's again, I'm gonna bring my accounting side, the financial aspect of it. These are realities. Therapy costs a lot of money, even when you have your medical aid. So I think now it's about being realistic and saying, when we can afford it, I'll go to therapy. And maybe, hopefully, one day we get to a point where we can both go at the same time and, just have our individual journeys, but that are taking place at the same time. So that's the goal. But at least there's that acknowledgement that this is the route we want to take,
As much as I'm trying to heal by myself, I always go back to what I know, which is Steffi should be helping me.
Yeah.
Steffi should be the same way that my mom and my dad and my siblings have helped me. And it's really scary because I also want to get to that point where I can set her free. For her to do what she wants without any restrictions coming from her husband, and also for me to feel confident enough to know that I'm enough for myself. So that's also a very scary journey to come across.